Hi guys, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Gemma here. I wanted to talk a little bit today about compulsions and leaving them there. It's not possible to make a really good level of progress with OCD if you're still doing compulsions. Now, it doesn't matter if that's just the odd compulsion. Obviously, fantastic if you've managed to cut them and you're not doing them all the time and you are just doing the odd one. That's a massive improvement on what you were doing, so great. But you're not going to get to a level of recovery where you're not going to be impacted by it anymore, or you're not going to get to a level of acceptance where you are fully accepting your worst case scenario, because a compulsion is the opposite of that. A compulsion is you saying, I cannot handle this thing. This thing would be the worst thing ever. Therefore, I have to do this safety behavior in order to come back from what's happened. So when you change your beliefs via disputing work or via changing behaviors, via exposures, you'll start to be more accepting of these things. But if you then, let's say, you have an extreme trigger and you think, well, I'm not usually doing compulsions, but if I just, to bring myself back from this, if I just do this compulsion this time, if I, just leave this thing this time, if I just avoid this thing this time, or anything like that, your brain is going to take notice of that, and it's going to say, okay, so maybe we're not as okay with this thing as we've been trying to teach ourselves to be, because otherwise we wouldn't have done this behavior. This behavior shows that we're not okay with that thing. Therefore, it's really important that even when you're feeling the worst you felt, you've had a massive trigger, even though you haven't been doing loads of compulsions, you've been in a really good place, you still have to be so careful about slipping back into those behaviors. And yes, over time, those behaviors will become harder for you to slip back into, because you won't feel the need to. Because when something happens that would have normally triggered you, your automatic response is to accept it. Your automatic response is to think, okay, worst case scenario here is this. Okay, not ideal. However, I could deal with that. So when that's happening, you won't feel the need as much to do compulsions, but there will still be times, even later on in the journey, where something happens and you think, oh yeah, I didn't really like that. I could do with doing this. Like, I'm feeling quite triggered by the fact that I heard about this massive car accident. Therefore, I don't particularly want to go and drive on that same road today, but I'm going to. Or I don't feel like I want to go into work today because I felt quite triggered by this thing. Maybe I'll just have a little rest day. Maybe I'll just, and it's those little things, it's those things that don't seem like they're going to make a massive difference that can quite easily pull us back. And once we start reinforcing that belief again, that belief that actually this thing is terrible, that we do need to do something about this thing, once we start reinforcing that again, it's so easy to slip back into behaviors. Now, this isn't me saying you're going to do all this recovery work and yet you're still completely prone to experiencing OCD, and you're going to have to constantly think about everything that you're doing, every move that you're making, because that's not the case. But like with everything else, if you were building muscle at the gym, you would have to maintain it. You can't just think, oh, I've built this muscle now, I don't need to do anything with it. You can fall back, you can lose that muscle in the same way that you can fall back. You can do a compulsion and you can lose that level that you had. You can lose that acceptance. Yes, it's likely going to be there for a long time. Even if you're not maintaining it, if you're not working on it all the time, it's still likely to be there because you've spent so much time working on it and changing that belief. But you can slip back, as with everything. You can slip back into behaviors, you can slip back into compulsions, you can slip back into avoidance behaviors. It's the same as alcoholism. You're always going to be an alcoholic. Just because you stop drinking, that doesn't mean you're not an alcoholic. You're still prone to slipping back into that detrimental behavior, in the same way that you're always going to have OCD. You're not going to stop having OCD because you've recovered. You're not going to stop having OCD because you've come to a really good level of acceptance. You always have that brain and you're always susceptible to it. And therefore you do need to maintain that. And I'm not saying any of this to scare you, but I'm saying it to be quite realistic. And just realize that you are more prone to these fears, you are more prone to experiencing anxiety than people without OCD, and therefore you need to treat yourself that way. You do need to keep on top of it. You do need to pay attention to what you're doing. And once you're not feeling like the extreme level of anxiety anymore, it's a lot easier to identify what is OCD. Like, yes, you're never going to get certainty on it, of course, but I can quite easily now myself have a thought of, well, that thing feels a little bit uncomfortable, you know, maybe I'll do XYZ, and immediately my brain goes, no, that's like that's you trying to change the current state that you're in. You're trying to change the current way that you're feeling. Sit with that, allow that, and then it passes very, very quickly, because there's not a fear there. It is just that my brain does have that OCD latching mechanism, and I do have to maintain that. So